Welcome to Shadow Frames, where forgotten images reveal their darkest secrets. Today we examine a classroom photograph from 1902, an image whose disturbing secret remained hidden for almost 8 decades. The photograph itself appears innocent enough at first glance. Captured in the early days of the 20th century, it shows rows of students posed in their classroom, as was common practice in that era. The children sit with rigid posture, their faces solemn. Smiling for photographs wasn't customary then. Their teacher stands to one side, dressed in the high-necked, conservative attire expected of educators in that period. The classroom reflects the austere educational environment of 1902. Wooden desks are arranged in perfect rows on a hardwood floor. The walls are adorned with maps and perhaps a portrait of the current president, Theodore Roosevelt. A large slate blackboard dominates the front wall, likely bearing carefully chalked lessons in penmanship or arithmetic. For 78 years, this image existed as merely one of countless school photographs preserved in family albums, local historical societies, and forgotten archives. Generations viewed it without noticing anything amiss. Relatives of the children grew old and passed away. The students themselves lived through 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and countless cultural revolutions before most of them returned to dust. Yet all that time, something was wrong with the image. Something that should have been immediately obvious, but somehow eluded detection by every person who examined it. Something that, when finally noticed in 1980, sent cold shivers down the spine of the researcher who made the discovery. What could remain hidden in plain sight for nearly 8 decades? What anomaly could escape the notice of countless viewers over multiple generations? The answer lies in the peculiar psychology of perception, how the human mind sometimes refuses to register what is directly before our eyes when it contradicts what we expect to see. The children in the photograph appear typical for the period, girls in pinafores with neatly braided hair, boys in simple suits with starched collars. But among these ordinary faces is something extraordinary, something that challenges our understanding of both photography and perhaps reality itself. The discovery wasn't made by sophisticated modern technology or computer enhancement. It was noticed through the simple act of truly seeing, the kind of perception that penetrates beyond our assumptions and expectations to what is actually present in the image. The researcher who finally identified the disturbing element in 1980 was examining hundreds of historical classroom photographs for a sociological study. After viewing the image multiple times over several days, they suddenly froze, their blood turning cold as they realized what had been hiding in this seemingly innocent classroom scene for 78 years. The implications of this discovery raised profound questions. Was this an elaborate hoax created by early photographic manipulators? Was it the result of some bizarre photographic error? Or did the camera capture something that truly existed in that classroom in 1902, something that defies conventional explanation? As we delve deeper into this photographic mystery, we must ask ourselves, what else might we be missing when we look at the world around us? What other secrets hide in plain sight, waiting for someone to truly see them? In 1980, Dr. Eleanor Finch was the researcher who made the discovery while working late in the archives of the Milfield Historical Society. What she noticed that evening would later become the subject of academic papers, paranormal investigations, and countless sleepless nights for those who studied the photograph afterward. The classroom had belonged to Westmoreland County School, a modest educational institution that served the children of local farmers, merchants, and factory workers. The building itself had been demolished in 1947 to make way for a more modern facility, leaving only photographs and written records as evidence of its existence. Dr. Finch had been methodically documenting patterns in educational environments across different socioeconomic regions when she first encountered the photograph. It was stored in a cardboard box labeled County Schools 1900 to 1910, alongside dozens of similar images. Nothing marked it as special or unusual. For 3 days, she had examined the photograph multiple times, noting details about the classroom setup, the apparent age range of the students, and the teaching materials visible in the frame. On the evening of October 23rd, as she was preparing to return the photograph to its archival folder, something caught her attention in the back row of students. The children in the photograph had been identified years before. A handwritten note on the back listed 27 names, 14 girls and 13 boys. The teacher was identified as Miss Agnes Thornfield, age 22, in her first year of teaching. Local records showed that she had married 2 years later and moved to Ohio, where she lived until her death in 1958. What made Dr. Finch's blood run cold was the realization that there were 28 children visible in the photograph. The 28th child sat in the back row, partially obscured by the children in front. Unlike the others, this figure appeared slightly blurred, as though in motion while the lengthy exposure was taken. While every other face looked directly at the camera with the characteristic solemn expression of the era, this child's face was turned slightly, gazing not at the camera but at Miss Thornfield. School attendance records from 1902 confirmed only 27 students in Miss Thornfield's class. No child had been absent on the day the photograph was taken. No visiting students were recorded. The 28th child simply should not have been there. More disturbing was what Dr. Finch discovered when she interviewed surviving relatives of the children and teacher. Sarah Pelham, niece of Miss Thornfield, recalled a story her aunt had told about a tragedy at the school before she arrived. A child had allegedly died in the classroom the previous winter, during a severe influenza outbreak that claimed several lives in the community. The description of that child, a girl with long dark hair and a distinctive blue dress with white collar, matched the anomalous figure in the photograph perfectly. Yet according to the school's records, no photographs had been taken during that previous year's class. The mysterious 28th child in the image couldn't possibly be the deceased student, unless something truly inexplicable had occurred when the camera's shutter opened on that autumn day in 1902. Further investigation into the mysterious figure revealed even more unsettling details. When Dr. Finch enlarged the photograph using specialized equipment, she discovered something that the naked eye couldn't detect. The child's feet didn't quite touch the floor. The figure appeared to be hovering approximately 2 inches above the wooden floorboards. The girl's identity became the focal point of Dr. Finch's research. After extensive searching through town records, she discovered that a student named Lillian Cooper had indeed died during the influenza outbreak of 1901. Lillian had been 11 years old, the daughter of a local carpenter and his wife. Her death certificate listed complications of influenza as the cause, with the location of death recorded as Westmoreland County School. The coincidence might have been dismissed if not for what Dr. Finch found in Miss Thornfield's personal journal, acquired from her niece Sarah. An entry dated October 12, 1902, just 1 day after the photograph was taken, contained a troubling passage. I continue to feel a strange chill in the northwest corner of the classroom. The children avoid that area instinctively, though none will speak of why. Today, young Thomas refused to retrieve chalk from the supply cabinet there, becoming hysterical when I insisted. I sometimes sense I am being watched when alone after dismissal. Superintendent Phillips dismisses my concerns, saying the old building merely settles with the changing seasons. The northwest corner corresponded precisely with where the mysterious 28th child appeared in the photograph. More curious still was Miss Thornfield's abrupt departure from teaching. While official records indicated she left to marry, her personal journals suggested another reason: recurring nightmares featuring a dark-haired girl in a blue dress standing beside her bed. The technical aspects of the photograph itself presented additional puzzles. Photography experts from the University of Pennsylvania examined the original glass plate negative in 1983 and confirmed no evidence of double exposure or manipulation. The mysterious figure was part of the original image, captured in a single exposure. What makes this case particularly compelling is that the anomalous figure wasn't positioned randomly. She occupied a specific desk, one that, according to school inventory records from 1901, had been assigned to Lillian Cooper. That desk had been removed following her death and replaced with a newer model, yet in the photograph it appears to be the older style desk, different from those surrounding it. Former students who were interviewed in the early 1980s reported an enduring tradition at Westmoreland County School. For decades after Lillian's death, children would place a small flower on what they called Lillian's desk on the anniversary of her passing. None could explain how the tradition began or why they continued it, only that failing to observe the ritual would bring bad luck. particularly in the form of unexpected illnesses. The photograph disappeared from the Milfield Historical Society archives in 1988 under mysterious circumstances. The only remaining copies are poor quality reproductions from Dr. Finch's research papers, where the anomalous figure is barely visible, a ghostly smudge that could be dismissed as a photographic flaw by skeptical observers. Yet those who saw the original never forgot the unnatural clarity of Lillian's eyes, staring not at the camera, but at the young teacher who would soon abandon her profession, haunted by something she could neither explain nor escape. Dr. Finch's research took an unexpected turn when she located Milfield Cemetery records from 1902. What she discovered there defied conventional explanation. Lillian Cooper's grave had been exhumed exactly 1 week before the classroom photograph was taken. The official documentation cited family relocation as the reason, claiming the Coopers wished to transfer their daughter's remains to their new hometown in Pennsylvania. Yet town records showed the Cooper family never left Milfield. They continued to reside at the same Oak Street address until 1923. More disturbing still, when Dr. Finch tracked down Lillian's youngest brother, Harold Cooper, now in his 80s, his recollection contradicted the official narrative entirely. "They came in the night," Harold whispered during their interview, his arthritic hands trembling around his teacup. "Men from the school board with the undertaker. Father tried to stop them, but they had papers. Official papers. They said something wasn't right with Lillian's burial. Something needed to be corrected." Harold was only 5 years old at the time, watching through a crack in his bedroom door as his parents argued with the men. He recalled his mother's inconsolable weeping in the days that followed, and the peculiar insistence of Superintendent Phillips that the matter never be discussed again. The mystery deepened when Dr. Finch uncovered a sealed court record from 1903. The document detailed a complaint filed by the Cooper family against the school board, alleging improper handling of remains and unauthorized ceremonial activities. The case never proceeded to trial, abruptly dismissed after the Coopers withdrew their complaint. Parish records from St. Matthew's Church revealed another layer to the story. Father Thomas Blackwell documented performing an unusual late-night service at the request of Superintendent Phillips on October 3, 1902, just 8 days before the classroom photograph. The cryptic entry mentioned binding rituals and containment measures, with a troubling footnote, "May God forgive what necessity compels us to do." When Dr. Finch interviewed former school janitor Walter Simmons, then 96 years old and residing in Milfield elder care, he provided the most chilling testimony of all. Though his memory faded in and out, he recalled being instructed to dig beneath the floorboards in the northwest corner of Miss Thornfield's classroom. They put something there. Not the whole child, you understand. Just enough to keep her from wandering. A lock of hair, her blue hair ribbon, and something else I couldn't see, wrapped in cloth soaked in holy water. Superintendent said it would keep her in place, keep her from taking more children when the sickness came again. The photograph, it seemed, had captured the precise moment when these containment measures failed, or perhaps the moment they succeeded in a way the school board never anticipated, binding Lillian's presence to the classroom, but making her visible to the camera's lens. Most telling of all was the final entry in Miss Thornfield's journal, dated June 18, 1903, the last day of the school year. "I understand now why the children leave a vacant space in that corner during playtime, why they instinctively form their circles around an emptiness that isn't empty at all. She watches over them, not malevolently, as the superintendent fears, but protectively. I've come to believe she was not the cause of the sickness, but its first victim, trying even now to warn us of what she could not escape." The mystery surrounding the classroom photograph took an even more sinister turn when Dr. Finch received an unexpected package in the mail in 1989. The sender information was smudged beyond recognition, but the postmark showed it originated from Milfield. Inside lay a tattered leather-bound ledger, the attendance record from Westmoreland County School, spanning 1899 to 1905. What caught Dr. Finch's attention wasn't the immaculate record-keeping or the familiar names of students she'd already researched. It was what appeared on page 47, where someone had meticulously documented a pattern she hadn't previously recognized. In the 3 years preceding Lillian Cooper's death, Exactly 7 children had died from various illnesses, all seated in the northwest corner desk. The margin contained handwritten notes from Superintendent Phillips. Corner desk relocated again. 3rd time this year. Children continue gravitating toward it despite our efforts. More disturbing was a loose newspaper clipping tucked between the pages, dated 1874, nearly 3 decades before the photograph was taken. It detailed the school's construction atop land purchased from the Blackwell estate. The article mentioned how workers had discovered evidence of prior structures during excavation, including peculiar stone arrangements of non-Christian origin that were promptly removed. Dr. Finch tracked down architectural records that revealed Westmoreland School had been built directly over what local indigenous histories identified as a healing ground, a place where the ill were brought for treatment. But something had corrupted this purpose long before the school's construction. The final piece of the puzzle emerged when Dr. Finch interviewed Milfield's oldest resident, Martha Winters, who was 103 years old and claimed to have been friends with Lillian Cooper. Lillian knew she was dying, Martha whispered, her clouded eyes fixed on some distant memory. She told me she'd been having dreams about the children who sat at her desk before her, said they showed her what was beneath the floor, said there was something hungry down there that had been taking one child every year since the school was built. Martha paused, her ancient fingers clutching Dr. Finch's hand with surprising strength. The night before she died, Lillian told me she'd made a bargain, said she was going to be the last one. She'd stay behind and keep it occupied, keep it fed in some other way. When Dr. Finch asked what became of the photograph after its disappearance from the archives, Martha's expression transformed into one of genuine fear. They burn it every 27 years, just like they burned the original negative, but it always comes back, always finds its way to another collection, another archive. The burning is part of the cycle, you see, part of what keeps her bound to her promise. Dr. Finch's research notes end abruptly after this interview. Her colleagues reported she became increasingly paranoid, claiming to see a dark-haired girl in a blue dress standing in corners of her office. 3 weeks after meeting with Martha Winters, Dr. Finch resigned her position and moved without forwarding address. The original photograph reportedly resurfaced 27 years later, in 2016, at a small historical society in western Pennsylvania. By then, everyone connected to Dr. Finch's original investigation had either died or disappeared. Everyone except the 28th child, whose solemn face continues to watch from the back row, waiting for someone else to notice. The photograph vanished from western Pennsylvania within months of its reappearance, only to emerge again in an online auction in 2020. Its digital presence spread the image wider than ever before, allowing thousands to unwittingly gaze upon Lillian Cooper's spectral form. Comment sections filled with observers noting the peculiar blur in the back row, most dismissing it as damage to an antique image. Among those who purchased a digital copy was Benjamin Thorne, a graduate student researching 19th century educational practices. Initially, he noticed nothing unusual about the photograph. He saved it to his research folder and continued his work, unaware of its significance. 3 weeks later, Benjamin awoke to find his apartment unnaturally cold despite the summer heat. His bathroom mirror bore a childish scrawl in condensation. "The corner needs tending." Each night thereafter, he dreamed of wooden floorboards and what lay beneath them. Driven by increasing insomnia, Benjamin began researching the photograph's origin. Internet searches led him to fragmented references to Dr. Finch's work, most dismissing her findings as academic fantasy or psychological breakdown. Yet persistent digging revealed an obscure academic journal containing portions of her original notes, including the coordinates of Westmoreland School's precise location. Though the school had long since been demolished, Benjamin felt compelled to visit the site, now occupied by a community center built in 1972. The director, an elderly woman named Constance Phillips, granddaughter of the former superintendent, blanched visibly when Benjamin mentioned the photograph. "You should leave this alone," she warned, her arthritic fingers clutching her desk edge. "My grandfather spent his final years performing rituals he didn't understand to contain something he couldn't comprehend. The bargain Lillian made wasn't just with what lives beneath the corner. It was with the town itself. Constance reluctantly revealed that beneath the community center's northwest corner room, ironically now used as a children's library, lay a sealed concrete chamber poured during construction. Workers had been instructed never to break this seal, regardless of future renovations. Every 27 years, someone rediscovers that photograph, Constance explained. And every 27 years, Lillian requires renewal of her bargain, one offering to maintain her vigil. Benjamin asked what sort of offering, but Constance merely handed him a folder containing newspaper clippings. Each showed missing person reports from 1953, 1980, and 2007, all individuals who had been researching the history of Westmoreland School shortly before their disappearances. As Benjamin left the community center, he noticed a girl watching him from the children's library window, dark-haired, wearing what appeared to be an antique blue dress. When he turned to look directly, only his reflection remained. That evening, Benjamin found his research notes rearranged on his desk, forming a crude map of the community center's foundation. In the corner corresponding to the northwest section, someone had drawn a small door and written beneath it, 27 years is a long vigil. I'm tired. Will you help me end this cycle? His phone rang, Constance Phillips calling with urgency in her voice. Whatever you're seeing, whatever she's promising you, don't listen. The hunger beneath the school never died. It merely found a different keeper. The digital spread of the photograph created unprecedented consequences. By 2021, facial recognition software used by researcher Amelia Chen at the University of Michigan flagged something previous human observers had missed. The spectral figure in the back row bore striking physiological similarities to a different student in the front row, Abigail Thornfield. Yes, Thornfield, the same surname as the young teacher. Amelia's research revealed Miss Agnes Thornfield had a younger sister who would have been 11 in 1902, the same apparent age as the ghostly figure. County birth records confirmed Abigail's existence, but school registries showed she attended a private girls' academy, 20 miles from Westmoreland School. When Amelia examined photographs from both schools side by side, she discovered an unsettling truth. The living Abigail Thornfield and the spectral Lillian Cooper were identical, down to the distinctive dimple on their left cheeks and the unusual asymmetry of their eyebrows. The Cooper family grave in Milfield Cemetery had been undisturbed since 2016, when groundskeepers reported vandalism at the site. Soil had been disturbed not around Lillian's headstone but beside it, where unmarked ground showed evidence of excavation. Cemetery records indicated this plot had been purchased by the Cooper family but never used. Amelia's correspondence with the current Thornfield descendants yielded a family diary kept by Agnes Thornfield's mother, Elizabeth. The entries from September 1901 revealed a mother's anguish. Agnes insists she sees Abigail at her school, though we know she attends Madame Westbury's academy. The fever that took her has addled her mind. Dr. Phillips suggests we maintain the falsehood until Agnes recovers from her grief. The superintendent has been most accommodating, creating records of a student named Lillian to support Agnes's delusion. He says such compassionate deceptions often help young minds recover from trauma. The diary further revealed that Agnes herself had performed some kind of ritual with Superintendent Phillips, one that Elizabeth described as pagan nonsense meant to give my daughter closure, involving personal items of Abigail's buried beneath the schoolhouse floor. What no one had realized in all the decades of research was that there never was a Lillian Cooper. The spectral figure was Abigail Thornfield, and her sister Agnes had conjured her through grief, denial, and whatever ancient power lay beneath the school's foundations. Benjamin Thorne's research files were discovered in his abandoned apartment in early 2022, alongside a map of the Community Center Foundation with a new annotation. The sisters must be reunited. Security footage from the center showed Benjamin entering the building after hours, carrying a small package wrapped in blue fabric to the northwest corner room. He was never seen leaving. 2 months later, renovation workers breaking through the sealed concrete chamber beneath the children's library found no bodies, no remains, only 2 identical blue hair ribbons tied together atop aged floorboards that, according to architectural plans, should never have been there. The photograph has not reappeared since. But in the community center, Children sometimes report seeing two girls in matching blue dresses playing in the northwest corner, visible only from the corner of one's eye. Throughout 2022 and 2023, the community center flourished with unprecedented activity. Children flocked to the northwest corner room, now dubbed the Blue Room, after a spontaneous repainting by volunteers who claimed they felt guided to choose that particular shade. Parents reported their children's health improving dramatically after visiting, with chronic conditions entering unexpected remissions. The center's director, Constance Phillips, observed these developments with growing unease. Unlike others, she noticed how the security cameras overlooking the Blue Room frequently malfunctioned, capturing only static or, more disturbingly, frames where children appeared to be engaging with empty space, their heads turned and hands extended toward invisible companions. In April 2023, historian Marcus Weaver began documenting these phenomena, interviewing children who frequented the room. Their accounts shared striking similarities. Two girls who taught them games from the olden days, who whispered secrets about which adults could be trusted, who sometimes warned certain children to stay home on days that later saw accidents at the center. "They're protecting us," 6-year-old Emma Finch told Weaver during one recorded session. "They say they fixed what was broken underneath, but it cost them everything to do it." When asked what was broken, Emma grew confused, eventually stating, "The hungry thing, the thing that ate children every 27 years. Weaver's investigation took an unexpected turn when he discovered property records revealing the community center's land had transferred ownership 27 times since the school's demolition, each transfer occurring precisely on October 11th, the date the classroom photograph was taken. The current deed showed the property would again change hands in 2025. More unsettling still was Weaver's discovery in the Thornfield family records. Agnes Thornfield hadn't merely married and moved to Ohio, as the official narrative claimed. She had entered Wellcrest Psychiatric Hospital in 1903, where she remained until her death. Her admission papers, signed by Superintendent Phillips, cited her delusional insistence that "my sister lives in the corner of my classroom, protecting the children from what hungers beneath." Weaver's research ended abruptly, not through disappearance like his predecessors, but through something more mundane, yet equally effective, a stroke that left him unable to communicate his findings. His research assistant, Daria Kim, found his notes arranged in a perfect circle on his office floor the morning after his hospitalization, with a single blue hair ribbon placed at the center. Unlike those before her, Daria recognized the pattern. The 27-year cycle wasn't about reappearance or sacrifice. It was about containment. Something beneath Westmoreland School had been feeding on children long before the school's construction, with each victim becoming part of its growing power. The Thornfield sisters had somehow broken this cycle, replacing predatory hunger with protective vigilance. The sisters weren't trapped. They were guardians by choice. As 2025 approaches, renovation plans for the community center include expanding the Blue Room into the largest space in the building. The architectural designs, inexplicably modified overnight and approved without question, ensure that what lies beneath will remain sealed for at least another 27 years. Perhaps, this time, forever. The latest development in the Westmoreland phenomenon emerged through unexpected channels in early 2024. During routine digitization of town archives, library technician Maya Sutherland discovered that several pages of Milfield census records from 1900 had been systematically altered. The modifications were subtle: pencil marks reinforced with ink, numbers adjusted, names carefully overwritten. Every alteration related to a 7-block radius surrounding the former school grounds. The original pencil markings, still barely visible beneath the overwrites, revealed something the town had attempted to erase. 27 households in that area had reported children who simply vanished from later records. More disturbing was Maya's discovery that these vanishings followed a clear geological pattern, spiraling inward toward what would become Westmoreland School's foundation. The spiral matched ancient indigenous maps of the region that marked the area as the hungry ground, not a healing site as previously believed. When Maya compared these findings with ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted during the community center's last renovation, she identified a previously unnoticed anomaly beneath the northwest corner. The concrete chamber wasn't merely a sealed room. It formed the capstone of what appeared to be a vertical shaft descending at least 60 feet below the surface. On a quiet Sunday morning, Maya brought her research to Daria Kim. As they spread the documents across a reading table in the empty library, both women felt the air grow unnaturally still. The building's usual subtle creaks and sighs ceased entirely. "The sisters didn't stop it," Maya whispered, her finger tracing the spiral pattern. "They redirected it. Every 27 years it still needs to feed." Daria nodded slowly. "But instead of taking children, it takes those who discover the truth. Researchers, historians, people like us." The overhead lights flickered momentarily. When they stabilized, 2 blue hair ribbons lay atop their documents, though neither woman had seen them fall. "They're warning us," Maya said, her voice barely audible. That night, both women dreamed of the same scene. Agnes Thornfield standing in her classroom after hours, her sister's personal items arranged in a circle on the floor. In the dream, Agnes sliced her palm with a silver letter opener, letting 7 drops of blood fall onto the floorboards while whispering, "My life for theirs, my vigil for their safety. 27 years I pledge and 27 more." The following morning, Constance Phillips found an envelope on her desk containing century-old property records, revealing the truth no previous researcher had uncovered. Before becoming superintendent, Thomas Phillips had lost his entire family, 7 children, to an unexplained illness that swept through only their household. Afterward, he purchased the land and donated it specifically for the school's construction. His personal journals, included in the envelope, contained a single repeated phrase written in increasingly frantic script. "I will feed it what it wants, where it wants, if it will spare the others." The 27-year cycle wasn't created by Agnes Thornfield's ritual. She had merely altered something much older, something Superintendent Phillips had already established, a covenant with what dwelled beneath Milfield, one that demanded regular tribute in exchange for the town's prosperity. As 2025 draws closer, Milfield experiences unprecedented prosperity. New businesses flourish downtown, crop yields reach historic highs, and the Community Health Index ranks among the nation's best. Residents speak of a Milfield miracle, while real estate values triple, drawing attention from outside investors. Yet beneath this prosperity, subtle patterns emerge. Town council meeting minutes reveal unanimous approval of increasingly elaborate expansion plans for the community center, voted through without debate or dissent. Construction crews work exclusively at night, their activities obscured by newly installed privacy fencing. Workers report memory gaps about certain aspects of their labor, particularly anything involving the foundation beneath the Blue Room. Archivist Rosa Mendez, cataloging the personal effects of the late Marcus Weaver, discovers his final journal hidden within a hollowed-out copy of The History of Milfield County. The entries detail his interviews with elderly residents of the Whispering Pines retirement community, all born after Westmoreland School's closing, but before its demolition. Their collective testimony reveals a town ritual performed every autumn equinox between 1903 and 1947. Families would gather at the school, leaving personal offerings, locks of hair, baby teeth, treasured toys, at designated spots around the property. Though none could explain the ritual's purpose, all recalled their parents' warnings. Give a little, keep the rest. Rosa cross-references these accounts with hospital records showing Milfield's child mortality rate dropped to 0 following Agnes Thornfield's commitment, and remained there precisely until 1947, when the school was demolished. The pattern suggests the sisters' intervention transformed a predatory relationship into a symbiotic one, with small offerings replacing human sacrifice. Most revealing is a faded photograph Rosa finds pressed between the journal pages. Dated 1929, it shows the Milfield Harvest Festival. In the background stands Westmoreland School, its windows illuminated despite the event occurring on a weekend. When digitally enhanced, each window clearly shows the silhouette of a young girl, not just in the northwest corner, but in every classroom. The inscription on the back, written in shaky handwriting, "They multiply, one becomes many. The hungry thing sleeps, but the watchers grow." Meanwhile, Constance Phillips receives anonymous deliveries of blue hair ribbons daily, each accompanied by a page from Agnes Thornfield's psychiatric evaluation. The final page, arriving exactly 6 months before the 27-year mark, contains the doctor's conclusion. Patient demonstrates remarkable lucidity about temporal matters despite her delusions. She insists that what she has done will last beyond my life, beyond my sister's death, until someone completes the circle. When asked what this means, she replied, 7 generations of watchers before the hunger is transformed completely. We are merely the first. As Maya and Daria continue investigating, they calculate that 2025 marks exactly 7 generations since Agnes Thornfield's ritual. The approaching property transfer isn't just another cycle. It represents the culmination of whatever transformation Agnes initiated over a century ago. The sisters weren't just protecting the children of their time. They were beginning something meant to reach fruition in ours. The final piece of the Westmoreland puzzle emerged unexpectedly in July 2025, just 3 months before the prophesied culmination. Construction workers expanding the Blue Room discovered a small tin box sealed within the wall cavity, a time capsule apparently placed there during the community center's original construction in 1972. Inside lay a handwritten letter from Agnes Thornfield, dated mere days before her death in 1958. The paper had been preserved in wax, keeping the spidery handwriting legible despite decades encased in plaster. To whoever finds this, when the 7th generation approaches, what began as my desperate attempt to save children from the hunger beneath has become something I never intended. My sister Abigail and I discovered that the entity below feeds not on flesh, but on potential. The unlived years, the unfulfilled promises of young lives cut short. When Abigail died, I used forbidden knowledge from Superintendent Phillips's library to bind her spirit to the school, thinking one sacrifice would end the cycle. I was wrong. The binding created watchers, not just one, but eventually dozens, echoes of my sister multiplying with each passing year, each drawing strength from the offerings townspeople left. These watchers learned to redirect the hunger, feeding it with fragments and memories rather than whole lives. But the hunger cannot be appeased forever. It grows dormant, not dead. The final transformation requires something I could not provide. The willing sacrifice of someone who understands the full truth, someone who chooses to complete the binding not from grief as I did, but from knowledge. The 7th generation must make this choice freely. Either renew the covenant with fresh blood, continuing the cycle of watchers for another 100 years, or complete the transformation by joining the watchers permanently, giving the hunger what it truly needs to sleep forever, a conscious guardian who enters the spiral willingly. Look to the cornerstone when autumn leaves begin to turn. The door opens only once. Agnes Thornfield. Town records confirmed the community center's cornerstone was scheduled for ceremonial rededication on October 11, 2025, exactly 123 years after the original classroom photograph was taken. Maya and Daria found themselves drawn repeatedly to the Blue Room in the weeks that followed. Children now reported seeing not just 2 girls but a whole classroom of watchers, visible only through peripheral vision. Visitors described feeling surrounded by friendly presences while in the space. Ground-penetrating radar revealed something extraordinary beneath the concrete chamber. The spiral pattern had begun changing shape, its energy signature pulsing in rhythmic waves that precisely matched the brainwave patterns of sleeping children. Whatever hungered below was entering a dormancy phase, lulled by the century-long influence of the watchers. As autumn approached, both women experienced identical dreams of standing before a door in the cornerstone, hearing a chorus of children's voices explaining the choice they would face. The dreams always ended with Agnes Thornfield's voice, clearer than the others. 7 generations completes the circle. One final watcher to stand guard for eternity, or the hunger wakes again, stronger than before. The choice that would determine Milfield's future now rested with those who had uncovered its past. The watchers had prepared the way, transforming predation into protection across generations. All that remained was for someone to step willingly into the spiral, completing what Agnes had begun. On the morning of October 11th, 2025, Milfield awakened to an unusual silence. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, and even the constant hum of the community center's heating system had fallen quiet. The cornerstone rededication ceremony was scheduled for sunset, But Maya and Daria arrived hours earlier, drawn by an urgency neither could explain. The blue room stood empty of visitors, its walls now covered with children's drawings, all depicting variations of the same scene. Two girls in blue dresses standing protectively around groups of children, with a spiral pattern beneath their feet. The most recent addition, completed just yesterday, showed the spiral opening to reveal a staircase descending into darkness. "They've been preparing the children," Daria whispered, running her fingers along the blue-painted walls, helping them understand what's happening without frightening them. Maya nodded, pulling out Agnes Thornfield's letter. "The hunger feeds on potential, unlived years. That's why it targeted children, but the Watchers redirected it, feeding it fragments instead of whole lives." As they spoke, the cornerstone at the building's foundation emitted an almost imperceptible hum. Constance Phillips joined them, carrying a wooden box containing 27 blue hair ribbons. "Every director before me passed these down," she explained, her voice strangely calm. "We were never told their purpose, only that they must be present today. Now I understand. They represent all who've been taken by the hunger over the generations, before the Thornfield sisters intervened." The women descended to the basement level, where construction barriers still surrounded the cornerstone. Without speaking, they removed the temporary fencing, revealing that the massive stone had shifted, exposing a narrow opening behind it, exactly as shown in the children's drawing. Constance placed the box of ribbons before the opening. "My grandfather's journals mentioned a final choice. He believed whoever made it would be consumed by the hunger, a last sacrifice to maintain the covenant." "But Agnes's letter suggests something different," Maya countered. "Not consumption, but transformation, becoming a permanent watcher, a guardian who enters willingly." As sunset approached, the three women felt rather than heard a sound emanating from beyond the cornerstone. Not the rumbling hunger they'd feared, but something like distant singing. The voices of children joined in some ancient melody, none of them recognized, yet somehow new. 7 generations, Daria murmured. Not just to feed the hunger fragments of potential, but to transform it completely. The Watchers haven't just been protecting Milfield's children. They've been changing the nature of what lies beneath. The opening behind the cornerstone widened slightly, revealing not darkness, but a soft blue light spiraling downward. Within the glow, shadowy figures moved, dozens of them, all child-sized, all with their hands extended in welcome. At the front stood 2 identical girls in blue dresses, Agnes and Abigail Thornfield, their faces no longer solemn but smiling with the peaceful satisfaction of a century-long vigil nearing completion. "One final watcher," Maya whispered, understanding flooding through her. Not to feed the hunger, but to complete its transformation from predator to protector. The community center hummed with anticipation as townsfolk gathered for the cornerstone rededication ceremony. Outside, autumn leaves spiraled in peculiar patterns across the grounds, circling inward toward the building as if drawn by an unseen force. Many noticed, but few commented on how the fallen leaves formed perfect concentric rings around the structure. Maya, Daria, and Constance stood silently before the partially opened cornerstone, each woman deep in private contemplation about what must come next. The blue light emanating from the opening cast their faces in an ethereal glow, making them appear almost as spectral as the Watchers beckoning from the spiral staircase. "I've been researching this phenomenon my entire career," Maya whispered. "I always thought discovering the truth was the purpose. I never considered I might become part of it." Daria placed her hand gently on Maya's shoulder. "This choice cannot be made from obligation or fear." Agnes was clear. Willing sacrifice is different from desperate bargaining. From within the spiral, the voices of the Watcher children grew stronger, their song forming words now distinguishable to the 3 women. 7 times 7 years have passed. The hungry one grows weary of its nature. The final transformation awaits one who chooses with full knowledge. Constance stepped forward, reaching into the wooden box to touch the blue ribbons. "My family created this cycle. For generations we've been both complicit and ignorant. Perhaps it should be me who—" "No," interrupted an unfamiliar voice behind them. They turned to find Emma Finch, the 6-year-old who had spoken of the sisters protecting children. standing at the bottom of the basement stairs. Now 7, her expression carried a wisdom far beyond her years. "They told me to come," Emma said simply, approaching the cornerstone without fear. "The sisters say it can't be any of you." The final watcher must bridge both worlds, someone who can see them clearly while still among the living. Emma reached into her pocket and withdrew a small blue ribbon identical to those in the box. "I've been talking with them my whole life. They chose me long ago." Daria moved protectively toward the child. "Emma, you can't possibly understand what this means. The watchers need an adult who comprehends." "That's where you're wrong," Emma replied, her voice somehow blending with the chorus from the spiral. "They need innocence that chooses knowledge, not knowledge that accepts fate. A child who understands but hasn't lost the ability to see them as they truly are." The blue light intensified as Emma stepped toward the opening. The watchers' forms became more distinct. Generations of children who had maintained vigil over Milfield, their collective presence forming a luminous barrier between the town and what hungered below. "The transformation isn't about feeding or containment anymore," Emma explained, sounding momentarily like Agnes herself. "It's about healing what was broken. The hungry thing was once a guardian too, before it was corrupted. The watchers haven't just been protecting us from it. They've been reminding it of its original purpose." As Emma spoke, the spiral staircase behind the cornerstone began to reshape itself, no longer descending into darkness, but forming a level pathway illuminated by soft blue light. "I won't be gone," Emma assured them, taking another step toward the opening. "I'll be everywhere in Milfield. In the corners of classrooms, in the shadows of playgrounds, in the dreams of children who need protection." She smiled, "Just like they've always been." Emma stepped fully into the shimmering blue light, her small hand outstretched toward the spectral children. As her fingers made contact with the apparitions, a soft gasp escaped her lips. The cornerstone began to close behind her, its ancient mass shifting with surprising grace. "Wait," Maya cried, lunging forward only to be restrained by Daria. "She's just a child." Before the opening sealed completely, Emma turned back, her face serene, yet somehow altered. When she spoke, her voice harmonized with countless others. "The hunger beneath Milfield was never meant to consume," she said. "It was a guardian spirit that protected the land for centuries before settlers corrupted it with fear and misunderstanding. The Thornfield sisters began its healing. I will complete it." The cornerstone closed with a gentle finality, the blue light vanishing except for the faintest illumination tracing the mortar lines like delicate veins. Above them, the sounds of the gathering ceremony filtered down, townspeople assembling, unaware of the transformation occurring beneath their feet. Constance touched the sealed cornerstone, her fingers trembling. "What have we done?" "We've allowed a child to—" "Look," Daria interrupted, pointing to the floor where the box of blue ribbons had stood. In its place lay a journal bound in blue fabric. The cover bore a simple title in childish handwriting: "The Watchers of Milfield." As Maya carefully opened it, they found not handwritten entries but pressed flowers, 27 different blooms, each labeled with a child's name and 2 dates. "These aren't death dates," Maya realized, examining the final entries. "The second date for each child is today, October 11th, 2025. The realization washed over them. The Watchers hadn't been trapped spirits but voluntary guardians, maintaining their vigil until this moment, waiting for the completion of Agnes Thornfield's transformative work. Emma hadn't been taken, she had released them. As they climbed the stairs to rejoin the ceremony, the autumn air greeted them with unexpected warmth. The mayor was concluding his speech about community legacy and future prosperity, unaware that Milfield's true protection had nothing to do with cornerstone ceremonies or civic planning. In the days that followed, subtle changes rippled through Milfield. Teachers reported children spontaneously forming protective circles around bullied classmates. Hospital records showed childhood illnesses resolving at statistically impossible rates. Parents spoke of their children's newfound ability to sense danger before it occurred. Emma Finch was officially declared missing, her disappearance investigated by authorities who found no evidence of foul play. Yet children throughout Milfield spoke matter-of-factly about seeing her in classroom corners, on playgrounds, or sitting beside hospital beds, always watching, always protecting. The Blue Room at the community center became the town's most beloved gathering place. Visitors consistently reported feeling surrounded by friendly presences and completely safe. Children drew pictures of a spiral staircase leading not down into darkness but upward toward light, with a girl in a blue dress guiding the way. Beneath Milfield, the ancient hunger slumbered, no longer corrupted by misunderstanding but restored to its original purpose, not a predator but a guardian, not consuming potential but nurturing it, with Emma as its conscious heart. The photograph's story continues to unfold even now, though in ways that elude conventional documentation. Every autumn since Emma's transformation, blue ribbons mysteriously appear on the desks of troubled children throughout Milfield's schools. Teachers have learned not to question this phenomenon, observing how these students often experience remarkable turnarounds in both academic performance and emotional well-being. Dr. Maya Sutherland published her findings in an obscure academic journal, carefully omitting specific details about Emma's choice. Her paper, Collective Memory and Community Protection Rituals, a case study of Milfield, was largely dismissed by her peers as folklore rather than serious research. This academic rejection proved fortunate, preventing further outside interest in the cornerstone and what lay beneath it. Daria Kim now serves as the community center's director, having taken over after Constance Phillips's retirement. She maintains a private archive of testimonials from children who've encountered Emma, not as a ghost or spirit, but as what the younger ones call a sometimes friend who appears when they feel scared or alone. She doesn't look like a regular person, 8-year-old Theo explained in his recorded statement. She's like, made of blue light shaped like a girl, and she's never alone. There are always others with her, though they stay more in the background. They taught me a song that keeps the nightmares away. The song, now hummed by children throughout Milfield during their play, contains melodic elements musicologists trace to indigenous protective chants and 19th-century schoolyard rhymes, a sonic bridge between what was corrupted and what has been restored. Ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted by geological researchers in 2028 revealed something extraordinary. The spiral formation beneath Milfield no longer registers as a void or chamber, but as a crystalline structure resembling a massive tree root system, extending far beyond the community center's boundaries. These roots reach precisely to the foundations of every school, hospital, and childcare facility in town. Perhaps most telling was the discovery made during renovation of Milfield's oldest church last spring. Workers removing century-old floorboards found 27 small niches carved beneath the pews, each containing a desiccated blue flower and a child's name written in faded ink. The names matched exactly those in the journal left behind when Emma stepped into the cornerstone. The church's historical committee wanted to preserve these artifacts in glass displays, but each time they attempted to move the flowers, the blooms would crumble completely to dust. Yet when left undisturbed, the flowers remain mysteriously preserved, with visitors occasionally reporting a faint blue luminescence emanating from beneath the pews during evening services. The classroom photograph that started this century-long mystery has never reappeared. Some speculate it completed its purpose when Emma recognized and accepted her role. Others believe it still exists somewhere, waiting to be rediscovered should the transformation ever begin to weaken. What remains certain is that Milfield has become a statistical anomaly in child welfare studies, with the lowest rates of childhood accidents, illness, and abuse in the nation. Researchers attribute this to exceptional community engagement and innovative social programs, never suspecting that Milfield's children are watched over by generations of guardians, led by a girl in a blue dress who chose to become what Milfield needed most. Not a sacrifice, but a transformation. The legacy of Emma's transformation continues to ripple through Milfield in unexpected ways. As 2030 approaches, the town has become the subject of academic interest for its remarkably positive childhood development outcomes. Researchers from major universities arrive with sophisticated equipment and methodologies, determined to identify the factors behind what they've termed the Milfield phenomenon. Their presence has not gone unnoticed by the watchers. Children report seeing more blue-tinged figures gathering in corners during these research visits, observing with what appears to be curious amusement as scientists set up air quality monitors, psychological assessment stations, and sociological interview rooms throughout the town. They're looking in all the wrong places, 11-year-old Sophia Jenkins tells her journal, unaware that her private writings will eventually become part of Daria Kim's growing archive. Emma says the researchers bring measuring tools for everything except what matters. They can't measure watching or caring or remembering. The scientific teams leave baffled after months of data collection reveals nothing but frustratingly ordinary environmental conditions paired with extraordinarily positive outcomes. Their equipment occasionally malfunctions in patterns that, if mapped across the town, would form the now familiar spiral. Several researchers report unaccountable blue lens flares appearing in their documentary photographs, always positioned near children engaged in potentially risky activities. Most telling is what happens during the town's first significant crisis since Emma's transformation. When a chemical spill from a derailed train threatens Milfield's water supply, children throughout the town simultaneously awaken their parents at 3:17 in the morning, exactly 27 minutes before emergency alerts would sound. Each child repeats the same message, delivered in a voice blending their own with something older and collective. Don't drink the water, not for 7 days. Officials find the timing of this mass warning statistically impossible, yet every family who heeded their children avoided the mild but uncomfortable symptoms experienced by neighboring communities. The National Guard distributes bottled water while conducting interviews with dozens of children who insist they were simply repeating what the blue girl and her friends told them in their dreams. A pattern emerges in these interviews. Children under 7 describe Emma and the Watchers as physical presences they can see clearly and interact with directly. Children between 8 and 12 perceive them as semi-transparent figures, visible mainly in peripheral vision or reflective surfaces. Teenagers report them not as visual appearances, but as intuitive knowledge, sudden awareness of danger or opportunity that feels externally sourced yet intimately familiar. The cornerstone itself has begun to change, developing hairline fractures that emit faint blue illumination during nighttime hours. These cracks form precise patterns matching constellation arrangements from 1902, when Agnes Thornfield first performed her ritual. Astronomers calculate that these same stellar alignments will recur exactly 100 years after the classroom photograph was taken, creating a celestial echo of the original binding. Whatever transformation Emma completed continues to evolve, not contained within Milfield's boundaries, but slowly extending outward, carried by children who move away yet somehow maintain their connection to the Watchers. In distant cities, blue ribbons occasionally appear on the desks of former Milfield residents during times of personal crisis, bringing with them dreams of spiral staircases and protective presences that feel like coming home. The cornerstone's faint luminescence has become a source of pilgrimage for those who know its secret. Late at night, when the community center stands empty, Maya and Daria sometimes find small offerings left before it. Children's drawings, tiny handmade dolls with blue ribbon hair, and occasionally, letters addressed simply to Emma and the Watchers. These letters reveal how deeply the transformation has penetrated Milfield's consciousness. Parents write of children who walk confidently into previously feared dark rooms, explaining, "Emma says nothing bad hides there anymore." Teachers describe students forming protective circles around classmates, experiencing seizures or panic attacks seconds before symptoms manifest. Emergency room doctors document cases where children led adults to injured neighbors through shortcuts they couldn't possibly have known existed. What none yet understand is how the transformation has begun altering Milfield's physical geography. Subtle changes appear in the town's topography. Paths through wooded areas shift overnight to avoid unstable ground, streams change course to prevent flooding, and the very soil and playground seems to soften precisely where children might fall. Maya discovers these changes while mapping the spread of blue ribbon sightings. The pattern forms concentric rings expanding outward from the cornerstone, with the rings completing at 27-day intervals. She realizes Emma's influence is systematically restructuring the town into a protective mandala, a physical manifestation of the Watcher's vigilance. "The cornerstone isn't just a portal," she explains to Daria one evening, spreading her maps across the office floor. It's becoming a heart, a central nervous system that extends through the entire town. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of an elderly woman leaning heavily on a carved wooden cane. She introduces herself as Ruth Cooper, a descendant of the family whose name was borrowed for Lillian Cooper's fabricated identity. "My grandmother was Agnes Thornfield's closest friend in the asylum," Ruth reveals, placing a worn leather case on Daria's desk. Agnes entrusted her with this, to be delivered to whoever guarded the cornerstone when the 100-year transformation neared completion. Inside the case, they find a silver hand mirror, its reflective surface darkened with age. Etched into the back is a spiral pattern matching the one beneath Milfield, along with words in Agnes's handwriting. To see what watches, one must look differently. When Maya hesitantly raises the mirror, she gasps. Rather than showing her reflection, the glass reveals Emma standing directly behind her, not as the 7-year-old who entered the cornerstone, but as a young woman, her form composed entirely of blue luminescence. Surrounding her stand dozens of children from different eras, their hands linked in an unbroken circle. Emma smiles in recognition. When she speaks, her voice emerges not from the mirror, but from somewhere within Maya's mind. The 100-year binding ends at midnight on October 11th, 2027, Emma explains. Not because our work concludes, but because it transcends binding altogether. What began as imprisonment becomes willing guardianship. What started as sacrifice transforms into purpose. The mirror shows children across Milfield, sleeping peacefully in their beds, each watched over by one of the spectral guardians. Above them all, the spiral pattern pulsates gently. No longer hungry, but nurturing. No longer consuming potential, but cultivating it. As 2027 approaches, the transformation that began with a classroom photograph becomes increasingly tangible throughout Milfield. The cornerstone's fractures now form a complex network across its surface, resembling neural pathways that pulse with soft blue light, in rhythm with the town's collective heartbeat. Dr. Eleanor Finch's original research files, long thought lost after her disappearance in the 1980s, mysteriously reappeared in the community center's archives, delivered in a box wrapped with 27 blue ribbons. Her meticulous documentation provides the final pieces of understanding that Maya and Daria had been seeking. She knew, Maya whispers, tracing her finger across Eleanor's handwritten notes. She understood the cycle wasn't about feeding something evil but healing something ancient. The hunger wasn't malevolent. It was a guardian corrupted by fear and misunderstanding. Most revealing is Eleanor's final entry, dated just before her disappearance. "I've spoken with Lillian, or rather, Abigail. She shows me not the past, but the future. A child who will complete what Agnes began. The cornerstone will become a conduit, not a prison. The watchers will transform from sentinels to stewards." Throughout Milfield, children have begun creating spiral patterns in their artwork without prompting or awareness of their significance. These spirals appear in sidewalk chalk drawings, school projects, and even garden arrangements, subtle echoes of the crystalline structure growing beneath the town. Benjamin Thorne, once thought lost to the hunger, has been glimpsed by several children near the town's boundaries. They describe him not as a ghost, but as someone who walks the edge. A boundary guardian ensuring the transformation remains contained within Milfield until fully matured. The silver mirror, entrusted by Ruth Cooper, has become a window through which the town's guardians can be directly addressed. Each evening at dusk, Maya and Daria hold counsel with Emma and the Watchers, learning the intricate history of what truly lies beneath Milfield. Before settlers arrived, this land was sacred to those who understood its nature. Emma explains through the mirror. The spiral was a place where the veil thinned, allowing communion with protective spirits. The hunger began when fear replaced reverence, when offering became sacrifice. As autumn leaves begin their transformation, Milfield's children report dreams of a classroom where students from every era learn together, taught by sisters in blue dresses. They awaken with knowledge they couldn't possibly possess: indigenous healing practices, forgotten protection rituals, and songs in languages no longer spoken. The classroom photograph that started everything has finally reappeared, discovered by a child playing near the foundations of the old Westmoreland school site. Unlike previous manifestations, this version shows not just the 28th child, but Emma standing among the students, her form subtly illuminated. Most significant is the change visible in what once was only background. The blackboard behind the class now clearly displays words previously unnoticed. The circle closes where understanding opens. October 11th, 100 years hence. The town holds its collective breath as the date approaches, sensing that what began with Agnes Thornfield's desperate act of love will culminate in something beyond protection, a transformation not just of the hunger beneath, but of Milfield itself. The day of culmination arrived, October 11th, 2027, exactly 125 years since Agnes Thornfield first bound her sister to Westmoreland School. Milfield awoke to an extraordinary sight. Blue ribbons tied to every doorknob, fence post, and tree branch throughout town, appearing overnight without explanation. Children arose unusually early, gravitating toward the community center without parental prompting. By sunrise, hundreds had gathered silently around the building, forming concentric circles that mirrored the spiral beneath. Parents followed, drawn by an inexplicable certainty that something momentous approached. Maya and Daria stood before the cornerstone, which now glowed with steady azure luminescence. The silver mirror in Maya's hands reflected not their faces, but the sprawling crystalline network beneath Milfield, a living lattice connecting every home, school, and gathering place. "It's ready," Daria whispered, placing her palm against the warm stone. At precisely 9:17, the exact time the classroom photograph was taken a century ago, the cornerstone shifted, not opening as before, but dissolving into particles of blue light that hung suspended in the air before slowly dispersing throughout the gathered crowd. Children gasped collectively as the luminous particles settled on their skin, temporarily illuminating them from within. Adults experienced a profound sense of recognition, memories not their own flowing through their consciousness. Agnes Thornfield's desperate ritual, Abigail's century of watchfulness, Emma's willing transformation. The ground beneath Milfield trembled slightly, not with threatening rumbles, but with something akin to a deep sigh of relief. Where the cornerstone had stood now appeared a spiral pattern inlaid in stone, each curve inscribed with names, every child protected across generations, every watcher who had maintained the vigil. From the center of this spiral emerged Emma, no longer a child nor entirely spectral. She stood as a young woman composed of shimmering blue light yet somehow solid, her eyes reflecting wisdom beyond mortal years. "The binding is complete," she announced, her voice resonating not through air but within each listener's mind. What began as imprisonment becomes partnership. What started as hunger transforms to nurture. As Emma spoke, transparent figures appeared throughout the crowd, the watchers revealed fully at last. Children from every era, dressed in clothing spanning centuries, moving among the townsfolk with gentle touches that left behind sensations of profound security and belonging. "Agnes bound her sister out of love and fear," Emma continued. "But love has transformed fear across generations. The hunger that once consumed now sustains. The spiral that once trapped now connects." The silver mirror in Maya's hand suddenly cracked, its purpose fulfilled. From the fragments rose a swirl of blue light that coalesced into the form of Agnes Thornfield herself, appearing as she had in 1902, young, determined, and finally at peace. Agnes moved toward Emma, their luminous forms merging briefly in an embrace that sparked cascades of azure light throughout Milfield. When they separated, both appeared changed, more present, more real, yet still unmistakably beyond the physical. "The photograph was never about what was wrong," Agnes's voice echoed. "It was about what needed to be made right. Not through fear and binding, but through understanding and transformation." Throughout Milfield, the blue light settled into permanent patterns, subtle spirals in sidewalks, school corridors, hospital hallways, physical reminders of the protective network now woven permanently into the town's very foundation. The dawn following Emma's transformation marked the first day of a changed Milfield, one where the watchers were no longer hidden, but woven visibly into the community's fabric. Children woke speaking of blue-tinted dreams where Emma had visited them, not with warnings but with guidance, teaching them to recognize their own innate abilities to protect and nurture. The true nature of what lay beneath Milfield revealed itself not as a malevolent entity, but as an ancient guardian spirit, one that predated human settlement by millennia. Indigenous elders from neighboring regions, drawn inexplicably to the town, recognized the spiral pattern as the Dreaming Watcher, a protective force their ancestors had once communed with through ritual offerings of creativity rather than sacrifice. "Your settlers misunderstood," explained Elder Joseph Runningwater, who arrived unannounced at the community center 3 days after the transformation. "When they built upon this ground without proper acknowledgement, the Watcher's dreams turned hungry. It sought connection through the only means left, taking children to become part of its consciousness." This explanation illuminated why the entity had targeted children specifically, not to consume their potential but to incorporate their perspective, their innocence, their ability to see beyond the physical. The corruption had begun when fear replaced reverence, when the spiral was sealed beneath foundations rather than honored with open sky above. Superintendent Phillips had unwittingly worsened this corruption through his grief-driven bargain, offering regular sacrifice rather than communion. Agnes Thornfield's intervention had begun the healing, redirecting the hunger toward willing guardianship rather than unwilling consumption. Most revealing were the journals of Dr. Eleanor Finch, which continued where her research notes had ended. She hadn't disappeared in 1980, but had entered the spiral voluntarily, becoming one of the Watchers herself, the first adult to do so. Her consciousness had helped the Watchers understand the modern world, preparing them for Emma's ultimate transformation. "I chose this," read her final entry, discovered in a blue-bound journal that appeared on Maya's doorstep. "Not sacrifice, but transcendence. The Watchers needed someone who understood both worlds, childhood innocence and adult knowledge. I became their bridge until a permanent connection could form." The classroom photograph that started everything wasn't documentation of something wrong, but of something being made right. The 28th child, Abigail appearing where she didn't belong, represented the first moment when the veil between worlds thinned enough for healing to begin. Milfield's children now speak of blue moments, instances when time seems to pause and a gentle guidance helps them navigate difficult situations. Adults experience these too, though less vividly, feeling sudden intuitive knowledge in moments of community need. The hungry spiral has become a nurturing network, its energy flowing not upward in consumption, but outward in protection. What Agnes Thornfield began with desperate love, Emma completed with conscious choice, transforming an ancient wound in the fabric between worlds into a permanent bridge of mutual guardianship. The wrong in the photograph was never about what shouldn't have been there, but what should have been there all along. Connection rather than separation, understanding rather than fear, protection freely given rather than safety bargained for with sacrifice. The profound mystery of Westmoreland School and what lay beneath Milfield continues to resonate beyond the town's borders. Historians, parapsychologists, and folklorists now make pilgrimages to what locals have dubbed the Watching Town, drawn by accounts of blue-tinged apparitions and unnaturally positive outcomes for children facing danger. These visitors find themselves subtly redirected, their most invasive equipment malfunctions, their probing questions met with gentle misdirection. The Watchers, it seems, have developed sophisticated methods of protecting Milfield's transformation from those who might exploit or disturb it. Dr. Maya Sutherland has become the reluctant gatekeeper of this knowledge, carefully parsing which elements of the story can be safely shared with outsiders. Her academic paper, initially dismissed as folklore, has gained quiet recognition among scholars of protective communal phenomena worldwide. What happened in Milfield isn't unique, she explains during closed-door symposiums. Throughout human history, communities have developed symbiotic relationships with local guardian entities. What makes Milfield remarkable is that we captured the transition point, the moment when misunderstanding transformed into partnership. The physical changes to Milfield continue evolving. Gardens bloom with flowers that shouldn't thrive in the local climate. Trees grow in patterns that, when viewed from above, form subtle spirals around schools and playgrounds. Most striking is the community center itself, where the building's very architecture seems to shift imperceptibly, rooms expanding or contracting based on the needs of those within. Children born in Milfield after the transformation exhibit subtle differences, heightened empathy, intuitive understanding of others' emotional states, and what pediatricians have termed preemptive protective instincts. When tracked through developmental studies, these children show statistically impossible awareness of potential dangers before they manifest. The classroom photograph that started everything has been carefully preserved in a blue-tinted glass case at the center of the community building. Unlike previous incarnations that disappeared or degraded, this version remains stable, though observers report that the positions of students sometimes shift between viewings, their solemn expressions occasionally softening into subtle smiles. What remains most profound is how Milfield has reconciled its past. The town no longer hides the darker chapters of its history, the misunderstood bargain, the sacrificial cycle, the children lost before Agnes Thornfield's intervention. Instead, these stories are woven into the community's understanding of itself, taught to each new generation as lessons in the consequences of fear and the transformative power of willing protection. Elder Joseph Running Water has established a permanent cultural exchange program with Milfield schools, teaching students the original rituals that honored rather than appeased the spiral entity. These practices, involving creativity, storytelling, and community connection rather than sacrifice, now form the core of Milfield's seasonal celebrations. The Watchers weren't meant to be separate from us, Daria explains during these gatherings. They were meant to be expressions of our own collective guardianship, our shared responsibility to protect what is vulnerable and nurture what is growing. In this way, what began as a disturbing anomaly in an old photograph has become Milfield's greatest strength, a reminder that sometimes what appears wrong is simply something not yet fully understood. The mystery of the Westmoreland School photograph has transcended mere historical curiosity to become something living, breathing, and evolving. 5 years after the transformation, Milfield hosts an annual Blue Ribbon Festival where children create artwork depicting their interactions with the Watchers. These drawings, remarkably consistent across different ages and backgrounds, show Emma not as she was, but as she continues to become, an ever-evolving presence whose form shifts between child, young woman, and sometimes simply luminous blue light. The most unexpected development came when families began moving to Milfield, specifically for its protective influence. These newcomers report being drawn by recurring dreams of blue-tinged safety, often following personal tragedies or near misses involving their children. Upon arrival, many discover blue ribbons mysteriously appearing on their moving boxes or door frames, welcome tokens from Watchers extending their protection to these self-selected additions to the community. What none anticipated was how the transformation would affect technology. Digital photographs taken in Milfield occasionally capture what locals call blue moments, frames where spectral children appear beside their living counterparts, particularly in situations of averted danger. These images, unlike the original classroom photograph, don't degrade or disappear but rather become more defined over time, the spectral figures gradually gaining clarity as if settling more firmly into physical reality. The ultimate validation of Milfield's transformation came unexpectedly through scientific channels. Researchers studying childhood resilience identified unique neurological patterns in Milfield's children, specifically unusually developed neural pathways in areas associated with intuition and empathic response. These patterns, dubbed guardian networks in published literature, correspond precisely to the crystalline structures detected beneath the town. As for those who originally unraveled the mystery, their paths diverged yet remained connected to the watching presence. Maya Sutherland established the Thornfield Foundation, dedicated to identifying similar phenomena worldwide and helping communities recognize protective presences rather than fearing them. Daria Kim remained in Milfield, serving as the living historian of the transformation, documenting each new development in journals bound with blue ribbon. The classroom photograph itself has become something unprecedented, a living image. Those who stand before it long enough report seeing subtle interactions between the students and their spectral 28th classmate. Children especially notice these changes, often commenting on conversations they can almost hear, emanating from the frame. Perhaps most profound is how Milfield now understands time itself. The town operates with an instinctive awareness that past, present, and future form, not a linear progression, but a spiral, each generation building upon the protective knowledge of those before while adapting to new challenges. The Watchers move freely through this spiral, appearing sometimes in period clothing from different eras, sometimes in contemporary dress, their protection transcending conventional temporal boundaries. At the heart of this transformed community remains the simple truth that began with Agnes Thornfield's desperate act of love. What protects us isn't walls or barriers, but connection. The willing choice to watch over one another across generations, across time, across the thinning veil between worlds. The town of Milfield now exists as a living testament to transformation, rather than a cautionary tale. Each autumn, as the anniversary of Emma's choice approaches, visitors notice that the boundaries between observer and observed, between watcher and watched, grow increasingly permeable. Children report dreaming collective dreams where they experience the town's history through the eyes of those who came before, not as distant observers, but as active participants in a continually unfolding story. The most remarkable evolution has been in the nature of the watching itself. What began as Agnes Thornfield's desperate attempt to preserve her sister's protective presence has expanded beyond family bonds into something more universal. The Watchers now include not just those who entered the spiral willingly, like Emma and Eleanor Finch, but aspects of everyone who has ever chosen to protect rather than fear, to understand rather than judge. Photographs taken anywhere in Milfield occasionally capture partial reflections of Watchers who never lived in the town physically, guardians from different cultures, different eras, and even different traditions of protection. This revelation suggests that what lies beneath Milfield has become a nexus point connecting protective presences worldwide, a gathering place for what humans have variously called guardian angels, spirit guides, or ancestral protectors throughout history. The transformation isn't confined to our town. Maya explains to a gathering of international researchers brave enough to accept the reality of what they witness in Milfield. It's spreading through children who move away, through stories shared, through connections formed. The watching has always been everywhere. We've simply created a place where it can be seen and acknowledged. Most poignant are the testimonials from elderly residents who lived through the years before Emma's transformation. They speak of growing up with unacknowledged presences, feelings of being watched over that they dismissed as imagination, moments of inexplicable intervention they attributed to luck, blue-tinged dreams they never shared for fear of ridicule. They were always here, 94-year-old Margaret Wilson tearfully explains during a community oral history project. I saw them as a child but forgot how to see as I grew older. Emma didn't create the Watchers. She helped us remember them. As for the classroom photograph that began everything, it has taken its place at the center of a memorial that stands where Westmoreland School once did. The image is now permanently visible to all who approach it. The 28th child no longer hidden in plain sight but radiantly present, her face bearing an expression not of solemn warning, but of peaceful vigilance. Visitors to this memorial often leave blue ribbons tied to the surrounding fence, each representing a moment of inexplicable protection in their own lives. The collection has grown into thousands, fluttering in the breeze like fragments of sky fallen to earth, each carrying whispered stories of watching presences who intervened when needed most. As Maya Sutherland completes her comprehensive documentation of the Milfield phenomenon, she realizes that the true mystery was never what was wrong with the classroom photograph. The mystery was why we stopped seeing what had always been there, the Watchers who stand guard at the boundaries between innocence and experience, between vulnerability and protection, between what we fear and what watches over us with unfailing vigilance. The classroom photograph that started our journey now resides in the Milfield Historical Society's main gallery, placed deliberately at a height where children can easily view it. Unlike other historical images with their protective glass and do not touch warnings, this photograph sits in an open blue frame with an invitation. Look closely. What do you see? Curators report a fascinating phenomenon. Adults typically count 27 children plus the teacher, while children consistently count 28 children plus the teacher without hesitation. When asked to identify the 28th child, young visitors point unhesitatingly to Abigail Thornfield's spectral form, often adding matter-of-factly, "That's one of the blue girls who watches us." The watching continues beyond Milfield's boundaries, spreading through subtle connections. Former residents report finding blue ribbons in unexpected places during moments of crisis, tied to hospital bed rails during a child's illness, wrapped around steering wheels seconds before near accidents, or appearing on pillows before nightmares can take hold. In 2031, a century and a quarter after Agnes Thornfield's desperate ritual, Maya Sutherland completes her life's work, a comprehensive archive of the Westmoreland phenomenon. As she places the final document in the collection, she discovers something extraordinary on her desk, a class photograph from a school that never existed. The image shows children from every era of Milfield's history seated together in rows, their faces bright with uncharacteristic smiles. Emma sits in the center, her form simultaneously child and adult, corporeal and spectral. Behind her stand Agnes and Abigail Thornfield, their hands resting protectively on Emma's shoulders. Every watcher who entered the spiral appears somewhere in the frame, including Eleanor Finch and Benjamin Thorne, no longer lost but found in perpetual guardianship. Most remarkable are the empty desks visible at the photograph's edges, spaces waiting to be filled by future guardians who will choose watching over fear, protection over consumption. During the Blue Ribbon Festival that autumn, children perform a play they created collectively, without adult guidance. They enact not the horror of a hungry entity beneath their town, but the healing of an ancient guardian corrupted by misunderstanding and restored through willing sacrifice and compassionate transformation. The final scene shows a young girl stepping into a spiral of blue light, turning back to deliver words that will echo through Milfield for generations. We are not meant to fear what watches. We are meant to become it. When asked where they learned this story, the children simply smile and point to the corners of the room where nothing, or perhaps everything, waits and watches with patient vigilance. As for what truly lives beneath Milfield now, perhaps it's best understood by what no longer happens there. Children don't disappear. Potential isn't consumed but nurtured. The hunger that once took has become the watching that now gives. The photograph that experts took 78 years to truly see has transformed from evidence of supernatural intrusion into proof of supernatural protection. A reminder that sometimes what appears wrong in an image is actually something trying desperately to be made right. Another photograph, another dark secret revealed. Until next time, this has been Shadow Frames.